author Gwynneth Sunshine. She's written an autobiography, Darkness to Destiny, a powerful true story of a young woman's fight for freedom, which was published in 2017. Hello, Gwynneth.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
You're welcome.
I've been looking forward to having you on my show for ages. We've been communicating backwards and forwards, trying to get you in.
Quite a while.
So welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Do you like it here?
Love it, love it. Like the lights.
So you wrote an autobiography, a powerful true story of a young woman's fight for freedom. It was published last year. You have a degree in English. You tutor in the area as well.
Yes.
And you're a first-time author. So
I am.
Is Gwynneth Sunshine your real name?
Yeah. Gwynneth Sunshine is my real name.
Oh, yes, wow. It's such a nice name. And
it's not a pen name. It's not made up.
Is it not?
No, it's a real name. Real name.
Wow.
People often ask me that. They say, Sunshine, and they say, is that your real name? And I say, yes, it is. It is.
Oh, brilliant. So that's actually your real name. I can't believe it. So, it's a nice, hopeful name. And then the book is an autobiography, the story of your life. So you went through some dark times there's hope at the end. So can you tell us about that a little bit more? So you discovered Christianity at quite a young age.
Yes.
Whilst you were in boarding school.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
But then after that you helped the homeless.
Yes.
But it went a little bit awry, a little bit wrong.
Yes.
So what happened?
Well, what had happened was that I think that right near the beginning when I was younger, I suffered from depression and anxiety, and I think that was from a lot of pressure at boarding school, because I was at a professional dance school where you had to perform and succeed. And, you know, there comes a time after a few years where you know if you're going to make it or you know if you're not. So I think the depression was setting in, and so I sort of started to think, what am I going to do if I don't make this my career? And so that started me becoming very melancholy at a young age. And so I experimented in the occult, and it sort of had a negative effect on me and started to bring me down more into a lot more depression. But it was during that period of time that there was a school friend, and she sort of started to speak to me about a relationship with Jesus, and I never heard this before. I'd heard of going to church and being religious. And so, yes, I became a Christian, and by that I mean I committed my life to Jesus Christ, and I realised I needed him in my life at that point, and I was age 15 then. Wow, so you were Christian when you were in boarding school. Was that before you went down the wrong path? Yes, that was, yes. When I became a Christian, the depression went, and I was just full of life, full of the joys of life again. I had a purpose, because where this emptiness was, I found the love of God, and it just knocked me for six, because I didn't know that you could experience this. But I did, and that was what happened at that stage in my life. And I was totally fulfilled and loving life.
Okay, so what age were you when you discovered Christianity?
I was 15 then.
So you were 15 then?
Yes, I was at school. And I was 21 when I had the breakdown.
Right,
that was when,
I see. So that's the timeline.
So that was after I left, quite a few years after that I left boarding school, yes.
What caused the breakdown?
Well, I was very, very much involved with the homeless on the street. I sort of had an affinity with them because I could feel their pain with their sorrow and their depression, and there is a lot of mental illness with people on the streets. And so I was helping them and speaking to them about my experience with God and how God had helped me with the depression that I'd had and how I'd overcome. But I was also had a very physical job. I just worked in a restaurant, but it was a very physical job. I was going to meetings in the evening with my church. I never seemed to have any time off, and I didn't heed the warning signs that I was overdoing it, basically.
So like burnout, really?
Yes, it was total burnout.
You kind of needed a break, but you the doctors, you carried on till it got to that point.
Yeah, because I didn't know the signs. I had migraine very badly. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia, and there were symptoms there. But when you're young, you don't really understand.
No, when you're young.
Well, I didn't. I mean, maybe other young people did, but I wasn't gemmed up on this sort of thing, so I didn't really understand what was happening to me at that time.
Did you have a support network when you were feeling like that low and that way?
No, because I felt embarrassed. I mean, I never went to my mother or my family. I think it was, and I never even let people in my church know. I think this is one of the things that when people go through this sort of thing, that you feel ashamed that you should be coping. When you reprimand yourself that you're not coping. And also it's very overwhelming because you suddenly feel, I felt very physically weak because mine was a physical breakdown as well, so my body would shake. And then, your nerves start to fray, so to speak. And it was, the symptoms are gradual and I'm still going to work and still trying to act like there was nothing wrong, really. I think I was a bit in denial, to be honest, at first.
She was kind of pretending. She's pretending to cope.
Because it's like the show must go on, as you know, here, but only at work. I knew I had to go to work, and in those days you couldn't have a lot of time off, so I just continued.
So you went through horrible depression and sickness, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's other things that are mentioned on Amazon where we can get your autobiography, that you took part in satanic activities. Is that what was that?
The satanic activity was, which is like the occult, was more. I participated in that before I was a Christian, but what I found, and this is coming from a Christian perspective, this part of the story, that it was sort of like the demonic, because I do believe as a Christian that there's the Christian side, but there is the demonic side. And I was just experiencing that, and there was a real presence of evil to destroy me. And I go into more detail in my book of what happened there. So there was a fight between good and evil in my life. And I think people without a faith might find that part quite hard to understand. I know before I had a faith that I wouldn't have understood it. But I was just trying to cope to get through it. And it was trying to cope, and the coping mechanism wasn't very good at the time.
So in the timeline, when did that happen?
Well, I was 21, and then the demonic went on for quite a few years. It was going on, and I started to have voices in my head. I started to have suicidal thoughts, and I was taking overdoses. Things just got too much, and I was just on a treadmill of going downhill. And this was before I participated in anything else, in any other destructive behaviour. I tried to cope, I tried to pray. I've obviously been to Christians and asked them to pray with me and for me, but I don't think people quite understood that place that I was in, because unless you've been there yourself, it is quite hard to understand. It's nothing wrong with them. It was just that it was quite difficult for me to articulate at the time as well.
Yeah, to empathise.
Yeah.
People that have been through a situation in any sort of...
Yeah.
Any kind of situation would obviously empathise more than someone that looks at it with a theory kind of
That's
attitude.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's just the point. Yeah.
You were young, you were 21.
Yeah.
How long were you doing these occult satanic activities for? Did it go on quite a while?
The occult activities was before I was a Christian, but the backlash was sort of happening, with the breakdown. It was almost like there was a force against the good of Christ that didn't want me to help the addicted and help those on the street, because I was getting answers to prayer and things were happening and people's lives were changing. And so it was almost like there was a threat to that, coupled obviously with panic attacks and a terrible anxiety disorder. So I mean, people, the listeners, anybody that's been through this would resonate with them. You know, you just have a knot in your stomach like you're going in for an exam, except you're not going in for an exam. And it's just there constantly, like a physical pain, but really it's a psychological pain.
So how did
being manifested physically because of the mentally what's happening in your head.
How did you get through it?
Well, this was where I started to, one day I just thought, well, I know I can buy a bottle of cough mixture. So it was Benylin and it had a load of codeine in it. So I just went in and ripped the bottle off and just drank it. Probably about half a bottle. And I did overdose once on that, doing that in the street. And so I coped with that and drinking. I was never an alcoholic, but, I binge drink. That's how it started, to try and cope, because then it sort of settled the nerves. I guess you could say I was self-medicating because of the mental pain I was going through.
And you mentioned drug addiction in the Amazon.
Yeah, I did. Well, I went down a wrong route because I ended up going out with somebody who was actually a heroin addict. I mean, that was completely against my Christian faith, but he hid it well, and he was quite a big-built guy. And, all the addicts I know were skinny. They were really skinny, didn't eat. And I think I was in denial because I liked him. And to begin with, we just smoked a bit of pot and things like that. And I did a few tablets. I never did heroin myself. But a lot of people think that weed or skunk in particular is not addictive, but I'd like to put them wrong on that. If you're having an occasional joint, no, you're fine. But if you really smoke a lot of it and you're doing bongs, the bongs, then you get into a lot of trouble then.
So what do you think about the legislation now that they want things like weed possibly to become available everywhere? They've got the oil now. You've got the CBD oil, which can be a good thing, because the CBD oil can help people with chronic conditions and relieve them of the pain. So I can understand that side of it, because you don't want anyone to suffer from pain. But what do you think about it?
Personally, I sit on the fence with that one. I can see that there are properties within it that can help with pain, but I can't help feeling that it might sort of draw people into that lifestyle of even going on the black market to get some, even saying, well, say if somebody, or if people have got a habit, they might try and top it up. A bit like when people are on a script, on a morphine script, but they top it up with heroin on the street. Let's say I'm undecided right now because it's a new legislation. So I haven't really decided yet.
I see. So interesting. And you also mentioned poverty as well in the Amazon description of your autobiography.
Well, I was working when I was with this guy who later on became my husband, but he never worked. And because of his habit and because of my habit, and we both smoked cigarettes a lot, we never had any money. And so, we didn't eat properly and never any new clothes. So it was literally hand to mouth all the time.
Oh,
yeah, it wasn't
horrible.
good.
So the guy who was on heroin, you actually married him?
Yeah, I did, but it was other drugs as well. And so there was all people in that lifestyle that I was mixing with. And you end up sort of seeing people that are straight in inverted commas as being, they're the breadheads, they're different, they're wrong and you're right. You see, it produces a laziness, even marijuana. It produces a feeling of inertia where you lose that ability to want to get up and achieve, and also you lose the ability to sort out any problems because it's easy to get stoned and forget.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
So what did you think about Amy Winehouse when that all happened and she was in the news about her hanging out with her husband, I think it was at the time, and he influenced her in a really bad way, and we all know what happened to Amy.
Well, I still think that even with me, that we're all responsible for the choices that we make. I can understand, in that situation with her, but at the same time, she had her own mind whether she went down that route like I did. I mean, I never did heroin, I never injected, but, you know, I chose, even if, and I understand she was in mental pain, she couldn't cope with the pressure of fame, and this can happen. Mine was different with what happened to me. We all have causes why we get into things. We all have a reason. Some people it's just to have a good time, and I think that with Amy it was a good time that went sour. Drugs always go sour. It always does. It always captures people, and it stings them and it traps them. That's the nature of the beast.
So what do you think we should do about it? About people that are thinking of taking drugs, or maybe they're listening and they are doing a few bits and pieces. What can we do?
Well, I think that you know, there is a certain amount of education, and I think they do this in school as well. And I think it's getting the education out, getting it out, warning that if you go down this route, you know, that it's not going to satisfy you. I mean, we had years ago with Leah Betts and ecstasy and this sort of thing, and, you know, and the poor girl died. And we do have people that are raising a banner, so to speak, against the war on drugs. I think it's a very difficult one. I think that it's always going to be a losing battle in a sense, because the dealers are always around. But I think it's from teaching the children when they're young, and the parents have a responsibility there as well, to warn and to educate and to just be informed. You know, get the leaflets, find out about drugs and the effects that they can have, and not to put a scare into the children, but have a conversation if it comes up, you know, and just to guide them in the right direction.
Definitely.
Which is difficult with teenagers, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Because teenagers want to go off and experiment, and you know, they have to find their own way, and by making mistakes, that, you know, that's how we learn, you know, to a certain extent. But I think there needs to be that guidance, nevertheless. Sort of in the background, but willing to step forward when needed.
And how do you think your autobiography can help people?
Well, the way that I think that my autobiography can help people is because, especially with people that have, say, given their life to Jesus, for example, and they decided to walk with Christ, but they've still got problems that hang on. They've still got some issues that they can't solve, because it's easy to think that you go from darkness to light and we're all happy and everything's fine, but life isn't like that. And I think I show that we can, like I did, have a ministry on the streets with the addicted and the homeless, and that you can have a breakdown or some other reason. And I think that I can help by showing that we're all human. It's okay to fail. It's okay. You can pick yourself up again. You can change your life again. Your life doesn't have to be how it's always been, or through that bad time. So I hope I'm an inspiration to people. I want to be an inspiration to show that, look, I had a problem. I begged on the streets. You know, I had domestic violence and know what it was like to be battered and to be left alone. And that, you know, that as they read my book, a lot of people have said they can resonate with it. They can have empathy to what I went through, because it touches on some of the things they've been through. Some of it's just the bullying, but whatever, there's something in that book that they pick up on. And that makes me very pleased, because I did a lot of hard work writing
very
the book
rewarding.
and editing it.
Very rewarding.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the domestic violence, a horrible topic, but still, unfortunately, people go through that. Do you think there's any characteristics of people that we can spot? Like, if I was to meet someone, are there giveaway signs that I would know that person is potentially like that? Well, I always wonder that. That
is the $1 million question, isn't it, really? I mean, with my ex-husband, I mean, there wasn't many clues. He seemed very cordial, very friendly, had a sense of humour. You know, nobody else knew what was going on with me. And no, it is difficult to detect. It is very, very difficult. I say that if somebody was over the top and being very charismatic and not just being natural, then that's a bit of a giveaway, you know. that they're trying too hard, and are they really being themselves? But other than that, no. I think it's getting to know somebody. And I didn't, we just jumped into the relationship, and that was very foolhardy on my part. Well, he probably thinks it was foolhardy on his part.
Do you still see him?
Pardon?
Do you still see him?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't seen him, since I left 30 odd years ago, no.
Right, okay, so no contact with him?
Absolutely whatsoever. No contact, no.
Okay.
Don't know anything. No, don't know anything what's going on there at all.
Do you ever wonder?
No, not really. I think I just moved on. I mean, when I left, I was on the street when I left. I stayed at somebody's house, but then I had nowhere. And I think the thing was that my life is so totally changed, and I've achieved things in my life since then that in some respects it seems like another age. It seems like, did I really go through all that? Because you mature and you grow from it. That's another thing I want people to learn, is that you can make these mistakes and you can have addiction or homelessness and these things, but you can change. Your life can be productive. It doesn't mean it's the end. It feels like it's the end at the time, but it definitely isn't.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. So, Gwynneth is here to talk about her autobiography, Darkness to Destiny, a powerful true story of a young woman's fight for freedom. Basically, your story.
It is my
your
story.
Fight for freedom.
Yes.
Published last year in 2017.
2017, yes.
So how did you get published?
Well, what happened was that like you do if you're going to write a book, you have to look for publishers. So I put out book proposals to varying publishers, and some refuse you and some take you on, and you make your choice, and that's what happened. And I was accepted in, I think it was June 2016, but a book takes a long time to come out. So it took 13 months before it actually was published. But before it actually went on Amazon and in the bookshop, I'd say before it was established in these places, I reckon it was more like October last year. So it took, about a year, 4 months or something. It took quite a long time.
So what advice would you have for people listening right now who fancy writing a book? What tips would you give to them? How do you even go about writing a book, made fiction or fact or whatever they want to do?
Well, whether it's fiction or whether it's an autobiography, I think you've got to have a certain standard of writing. If it's going to be accepted by publishers, unless you pay for somebody who co-authors, who's going to ghostwrite or something like that. But if you're going to do it all yourself, which is what I did, and I edited it myself, you've got to have quite a good standard of English, and you've got to have a lot of determination and perseverance. And that can mean sitting at a computer for 5, 6, 7 hours a day.
Wow.
A long time. You have breaks, but you have to be determined, every day, like other people in jobs where you're you've got to, where you're doing this sort of work, you have to take your initiative and make yourself sit there and do it, because no one else will make you. And you have to take it each step at a time. Don't look at the end product. You just have to look at, I'm going to get through so many words today, so many words. And when you eventually get to the end, then you have the joy of editing. So it's like a massive essay that you write once, you edit it the second time, and then the third time you hope it's going to be perfect to send to the publishers.
So how long did it take you to write it?
Well, I started writing it when I was 26, because a long time ago, when I was quite young, and this was after the breakdown, because I wanted to make sense of what had happened, and I thought, well, I've got a faith in God, and God's helped me with so much, and I've helped other people on the streets and that, and they found a faith in God that's changed their life. So I must have an answer to this breakdown. I must have an answer to what's going on. But of course I didn't. So, can you repeat the question, please? I've gone off that now. Sorry. I veered off a little bit there.
That's fine. That's okay. So, just wondered how long you...
Oh, well, that was the question, yeah.
A long time.
Well, a long time.
Within bits.
Well, I stopped because, of course, when I went off the rails, I was off the rails for about 13 years. And then when I came back, I had a family and I had other commitments. So it was really when I'd say about 5 years ago, and it was in my church, and my pastor had said to me, he'd heard a little bit about what I'd gone through, and he said, have you thought about writing a book?
And you were like, actually?
I've actually got it bashed out on an old typewriter quite a long time ago, but of course I had to do a lot of amending and adding, and of course so much had happened since I was 26 to till all those years. So, I just started writing again.
Aww.
It took me quite a long time, yeah.
Yeah, but it was worth it, definitely.
Definitely worth it.
And you're giving talks as well about your autobiography and your experiences.
Yeah.
Including you've been to Chelmsford Prison.
Yes. Yes, second time. I went there last year, and I was invited by the Chelmsford Christian Fellowship to speak about my journey. And what had happened to me, and how Christ had changed my life, and God just healed me of this anxiety disorder. He just healed me of all of this, and the depression again, and we're talking, a long time ago when I believe that the Lord healed me from this. I mean, we're looking at about 1990, a long time ago. So it is quite a long time ago. So it was to speak about my journey and to give them hope that if I'd been through what I'd been through, then I could relate a bit to them, because a lot of them are in there because of drugs and things like this. So they quite like when I speak, because I just say it as it is. I don't dress it up to be anything other than what it is,
So do you speak to male prisoners, female prisoners?
Yeah, they're all male.
All male?
All male.
And how were you received?
About 60 of them, they loved it. They all clapped.
Oh.
They all clapped, and they all lined up. They wanted the book, so they wrote their name down for the book, and they're getting the book this week, and some of them hugged me, high-fived me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite an experience, You feel like you're going to... bit tear-jerking at times, because they're so warm. They're so warm.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
they've got hearts, a lot of them.
Oh.
They might have done wrong, but but when they see somebody that gives them hope, I think it gives them hope as well.
Were you scared to go there?
Pardon?
Were you scared to speak to them?
No, I think the first time I was a little bit hesitant a year ago. if I'm going to be honest, this time not at all. No, not scared at all. No.
What's prison like? I've never actually been to it. We see things on television like Bad Girls and Orange is the New Black. And there's people, like in the news, we always read reports about how they've got TV and all the channels at their disposal, and it's like luxury.
Well, I mean, I've never been into the cells. I mean, we don't actually go in the cells. We just go into it's like a room where we go to take the service. So they're led in there, and that's what happens there. So that's where it was taken. And then the second service, we had about 8, and we were in another side room in another part of the prison. So it's not as though we were wandering about, round into where they are, in their cells.
Okay, so so they're just there waiting for you, and you...
Yeah, they're just led in. The guards lead them in. There's quite a few guards, and they come in.
Were they sceptical at
first? Very, very good. They're better behaved than what they are at boarding school.
Oh, really? Were they sceptical? Were they sceptical at first? When you first started speaking?
No,
I
started off by saying I've never been in prison, but I've been in a prison of the mind. And I have been incarcerated in a prison that I couldn't be free of. And I said to them that sometimes you can be in a prison, and sometimes you could be, on the outside, but you could be more imprisoned in your mind on the outside than what you would be in prison if your mind's clear. If you're in prison but you haven't got a problem with the mind, then you can probably cope with things better. But if you're on the outside, you're in a prison of the mind. You're locked in like I was. And I said that, and they liked that. And then we were just away with it. We had songs. We had, there was a team with me. It wasn't just me. We had somebody else gave a lovely poem that they made up. It was a bit like a rap poem.
Oh, right.
But it was excellent. A young girl that was with us. Somebody else was singing with guitar. We had choruses, and so it was a team effort.
Brilliant stuff. Are you going back?
I don't know yet. I mean, if I'm invited, I'll definitely go back. Yeah, definitely.
And people can sponsor your autobiography as well. Can you talk about that? How do they do that?
Right, well, sponsoring, basically, what happens is that I I've had quite a few books that I purchase off my my publisher. So what happens is that they can give me some money, which is, they can give me £1, £2, £3, but if they want to pay for the book, it is £10. The full price. So what they do is, if they give me the £10 for a copy, and then it means that when I'm speaking, I speak in churches. I've been asked to speak, or I've spoken at full gospel businessmen's meetings where there's an informal meal, and then they have a speaker, and so it means that I'm able to give a book to those that need it, say rehabs or prison, or people that can't afford it. Sometimes there are people that can't afford it but genuinely want a copy. So that's how sponsoring works. So they're just literally, it's like they're buying a copy of me, and then I give it to who I deem is in need.
Right, I see. You know. And the Essex Authors Day, you're hoping to be there next year?
I was there last year. Well, I was a newbie on the block. I mean, there's about 30 authors, and I mean, I was the only one with an autobiography. All the others had novels.
Right.
Yeah. This year, I've had an email, and I've put myself in for it. So please, if anybody's listening, yes, I do want to be there this time. And I can have a 3-minute, it's called a slam, where I can just say a bit about the autobiography, not a lot, just a little bit about me, and a tiny little bit about the book, just to showcase the book, and also a workshop. I want to do a workshop on writing your autobiography, so people know how to structure it, how to write a book proposal, how to edit, how to seek out publishers, the whole gamut, the whole, well, not all of it, but to break it down into bite sizes, but so that they can benefit from it. So I'm hoping that I can. That'd be really wonderful.
So that's just, you're just waiting to get chosen, selected?
Well, yeah. I mean, last year I was chosen to have a stand for my book, but because I was a little bit late applying because they hadn't got my email address, this year they have. So, you know, I'm hoping by March that, you know, I shall be, doing all those three, what do you call it? That I'm able to showcase the book and have a workshop and obviously have a table.
Brilliant. Yeah. You are a fascinating lady, Gwynneth.
Thank you.
So, for anyone listening who wants to get your book, what should they do? Where can they find it?
Right, okay. If you want a copy of Darkness to Destiny by Gwynneth Sunshine, you can go on Amazon, just type in Darkness to Destiny, Gwynneth Sunshine, the book will come up. You can buy it on Kindle or in paperback, or you can buy it in Waterstones online, in paperback, or you can go into the Waterstones shop in the bookstore anywhere around the country. You can go in and say, I'd like this book, because it's actually, although it's not on the shelf, it's actually in their listings, so you can get it there. Or I'm not sure, but it was in the Southend Christian Bookshop. I don't know if it still is, in paperback. So those are the avenues. Or if anybody hears me speak anywhere, they might be able to buy one off me.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, I do. Darkness to Destiny, excuse me, darknesstodestiny.weebly.com. I think we're com. Do you know, I've just suddenly had a memory that something. Is it .co.uk? Look, if it's not .co.uk, do .com.
Try.
I'm sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I'm so used to doing my own email address, and I'm suddenly, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
I think you're a fascinating lady, and
thank you.
Best of luck with the book. I mean, it's going great so far, and I look forward to hearing you talk in future.
I'm lovely to be here.
Do come on the show again?
I will.
Any plans for another novel?
I am in the process of writing a second book, yes.
Oh, right. Would it be a follow-on from this one?
Well, people ask me that, but no, it's a different genre.
So another...
Okay. It's a little bit more academic, but it's going to have experiences in it as well, of different people. So it's a bit like a theology book, but it's not dry. It's going to have a bit of humour in it. It's not going to be boring, because I don't do boring. I hope not.
Watch this space. Thank you so much, author Gwynneth Sunshine, for coming on the show tonight.
Pleasure.